"Stand by for touchdown," bellowed Captain Strawn's voice on the big spaceship's intercom. "Control deck standing by," replied Tom. "Corbett," Strong continued, "you may take her down as soon as you get clearance from Venusport Traffic Control." Tom acknowledged the order with a brisk "Aye, sir." In a few moments he received permission to touch down on the newly colonized planet. Then, turning his attention to the control board, he requested a ground approach check from Roger. "About 2 miles to touchdown, Tom," reported Roger from the radar bridge. "Trajectory clear." "Okay, Roger," said Tom. Glancing quickly at the airspeed and rocket thrust indicators, he flipped a switch and sang out, "Power deck, reduce thrust on main drive rockets to minimum." "Got ya, Tom," boomed Astro. "Closing in fast, sir," said Tom to Strong, who had come up from below and now stood at the cadet's shoulder watching as Tom maneuvered the big ship through the Venusian atmosphere, his keen eyes sweeping the great panel of recording gauges and dials. 1,000 feet to touchdown, intoned Roger from the radar bridge. Reacting swiftly, Tom adjusted several levers, then picking up the intercom microphone, he threw a switch and yelled, "Power deck. Full braking thrust." Deep inside the Polaris, Astro, who tended the mighty rocket power plant with loving care, eased home the sensitive control mechanism, applying even pressure to the braking rockets. As the giant spaceship settled smoothly to within a few feet of the surface of the concrete spaceport, Tom threw the master switch that cut all power. A moment later the huge craft dropped easily, then settled on the landing platform with a gentle thump. "Touchdown," yelled Tom. Then, glancing at the astral chronometer on the control board, he turned to Strong, and saluting smartly, reported, "Polaris completes spaceflight at exactly 7:52:02. Strong returned the salute. "Very well, Tom. Now, I want you, Roger, and Astro to come with me to the Exposition Commissioner's office for an interview and detailed orders." "Yes, sir," said Tom. A few minutes later, dressed in fresh uniforms, the 3 cadets followed their unit commander out of the ship, then stood by as Strong ordered the chief petty officer of an enlisted Solar Guard working party to prepare the Polaris for moving to the exposition site. "Empty the reactant fuel tanks of all but enough for us to raise ship and touch down over to the fairgrounds," said Strong. "Better strip her of armament, too. Parala ray pistols and rifles, the 3-inch and 6-inch atomic blasters, narco sleeping gas, in fact, everything that could possibly cause any trouble." "Yes, sir," replied the scarlet-clad enlisted spaceman. "One thing more," added Strong. "There will be a crew living aboard, so please see that the galley is stocked with a full supply of both fresh and synthetic foods. That's about all, I guess." "Very well, sir," replied the petty officer with a crisp salute. He turned and began bawling orders to a squad of men behind him, and immediately they were swarming over the great ship like ants. 15 minutes later, a jet cab swerved to a stop in front of the tallest of the Venusport buildings, the Solar Alliance Chamber. Strong paid the driver, adding a handsome tip, and flanked by his 3 cadets strode briskly into the building. Crossing a high-ceilinged lobby, they entered an express vacuum elevator and 5 seconds later stepped out onto the 400th floor. There, Strong slid a panel door to one side and, followed by the cadets, stepped inside the office of Mike Hawks, Exposition Commissioner and retired senior officer of the Solar Guard. The office was impressively large and airy, with an outside wall forming a viewport of clear Titan crystal reaching from floor to vaulted ceiling and affording a magnificent view of the city of Venusport and, beyond it, the futuristic buildings of the exposition itself. Another wall, equally as large, was covered by a map of the exposition grounds. Mike Hawks, a man with steel gray hair, clear blue eyes, and a ramrod military bearing, sat behind a massive desk talking to two men. He looked up when Strong and the cadets walked in and rose quickly with a broad smile to greet them. "Steve," he exclaimed, rounding the desk to shake hands with his old friend. "I never dreamed we'd have you in the Polaris unit at our fair." He nodded warmly to the cadets who stood at rigid attention. "At ease, cadets. Glad to have you aboard." "I was just as surprised to get this assignment, Mike," said Strong, pumping the officer's hand. Nodding toward the men seated in front of Hawk's desk, he apologized. "Sorry to bust in on you like this, old man. Didn't know you were busy." "It's quite all right." The commissioner smiled. "Just handing out a few licenses for the concessions in the amusement section at the fair. People expect to have a little fun when they go to a fair, you know. By the stars, they're going to have it so long as I'm commissioner." He turned to the cadets. "Sit down, boys. You too, Steve. I'll be with you in a minute." He turned back to his desk and the waiting men. The cadets, at a nod from Strong, sat down on a leather couch that stretched the length of one wall and listened while Hawks completed his business with the two men. "There you are," said Hawks, applying the seal of his office to a slip of paper. "That gives you the right to operate a concession in the amusement area as long as the fair is open." One of the men took the paper and glanced at it quickly. "Wait a minute, Commissioner. This is over near the edge of the area," he complained. "We wanted to get in the middle. How do you expect us to make any credits away out there by ourselves?" The man's tone was surly and disrespectful. "Sorry, but that's the only location left. In fact," Hawks added acidly, "you're lucky to get it." "Really?" sneered the heavier of the two. "Well, I'm sure going to find out about this." Hawks stood up and eyed the two men coldly. "I've been appointed commissioner of this exposition by the delegates to the Solar Alliance Council. I answer only to the council. If you have a complaint, then you must present your case before that body." He cleared his throat and glared at them from behind his desk. "Good day, gentlemen," he said.